The West Coast Main Line is the main high-speed route between London and Glasgow.
The West Coast Main Line is a major rail artery, probably the most important rail artery in the country.
It carries around 75 million people a year, and we operate around about 2,500 trains each and every day.
It's a vital part of the country's infrastructure.
It serves the great economic and industrial centres.
Links them together. London, the Midlands, the North West and the Scottish Central Belt. Any railway line provides huge challenges to engineers. In the 19th century, particularly when the West Coast Main Line was being built, the challenge was simply working out the best way to construct the line. What was the best route? What was the best way to bore through these hills, to build viaducts across these ravines? I mean, when we look at the people who designed and built what we now call the West Coast Main Line, it really does read like a who's who of British engineering.
Joseph Locke did the line from Grand Junction down from Manchester, Liverpool to Birmingham, and Robert Stephenson to London, Birmingham. Thomas Gooch did the Trent Valley, and Locke finished the line up from Lancaster up to Glasgow and Edinburgh.
The West Coast Main Line was chosen for the first great modernisation, the Euston-Manchester-Liverpool electrification, which was completed in the 1960s and brought immediately the so-called sparks effect, a massive growth of traffic coming to the new, much faster services which struck the public imagination.
Old things, old ways ingrained into our lives have given place to new.
Over the last 40 years, that initial work has simply become outdated. It's lived its life, it's done well, it now needs replacement.
The West Coast project is all about enhancements and renewal of the railway from London to Manchester, London to Birmingham, and London up to Glasgow.
That included remodelling of areas like Rugby, Milton Keynes, Trent Valley.
Well, when we arrived in October 2002, the project was in some state of disarray. At that time, the forecast cost to complete was some 13 or 14 billion pounds, and was a project that had essentially bankrupted Railtrack.
The modernisation programme's had a checkered history. When Railtrack first set it up, the arrangement that had been agreed with Virgin, the train operator, was essentially not deliverable. Railtrack went into administration, Network Rail took over to come up with a plan that was going to be deliverable.
The West Coast Main Line was not built as an entity. The West Coast Main Line, although we talk of it as an entity, in fact is made up of all sorts of little bits and pieces built to serve different purposes. So if you take London to Glasgow, for example, that's made up of the lines of, I think it's 12 separate railway companies at one stage or another. And part of the problem that the people modernising it ever afterwards have had to face is the points where those companies' lines come together.
The West Coast Main Line is a major rail artery, probably the most important rail artery in the country.
It carries around 75 million people a year, and we operate around about 2,500 trains each and every day.
Unless we spend huge amounts of money, even with the West Coast modernisation, we're constrained by the track layout that's been set over the last couple of hundred years. If you were starting again, you might do it differently.
Literally, it's like surgery. We have to dismantle a railway, we have to rebuild it and hand it back to operating trains exactly when we say we're going to do that.
If you're working on a busy railway like the West Coast Main Line, you require access to the railway which can't be given all the time. It can only be given in certain slots, and that enormously complicates the work that you're trying to do.
To rebuild a railway while you keep it operating Monday through Friday, work on the weekend, requires a significant amount of planning and management and just hard work.
On each railway, there were often individual obstacles which had to be overcome and which required very clever engineering. Kilsby Tunnel, for example.
Unfortunately, from Stevenson's point of view, there was no experience of building a railway on that scale before. He had to modify the design as he went along, and Kilsby, in many ways, was an absolute disaster. It went colossally over budget because of those engineering difficulties. There were problems with it collapsing as well, and people were losing their lives.
Every year we deliver 5,000 projects, and this time last year we did get one or two projects wrong, and we saw the enormous impact on the travelling public.
And we have to make sure that we're working safely. Often we have to turn the overhead line power off in order to do works, and therefore you can't run trains during that period.
Confidence in the project, frankly, after the overrun at Rugby last Christmas was low. But the team looked at that very much in an objective way in terms of what needed to be done last year. They literally planned the project, they pulled the plan to pieces, they replanned it, they pulled it to pieces again, and they put in place a plan that we knew we could deliver.
We learned from that, and that helped us deliver a significant amount of work in 2008.
We've changed what we do and how we do it. We plan our projects with even greater meticulous detail.
As we got more successes, we got through various commissionings, just started to gain more and more momentum as we went through the year.
The 19th century origins of the West Coast Main Line do present real challenges to today's engineers and operators, because those early engineers built bridges and tunnels which were smaller than was later to become the standard. Also routes which twisted more than we might like today. But as trains have got faster for all sorts of reasons, those curves do present us with a problem. How do we basically operate the trains successfully?
There is no straight track on the West Coast. That is very important for what we did in that in order to increase the line speeds on this particular main line, we had to introduce tilting trains. We worked 94 million man-hours on this project.
At its peak, we were spending over £4 million a day, every day.
We have renewed or repaired 174 bridges.
We've renewed over 3 million yards of track.
Over 830 switches and crossings.
The job was costed at over £13 billion, and we've managed to deliver it for under £9 billion.
Every weekend, every major commissioning was a challenge through the year that the guys delivered.
I think it's a tremendous achievement that the West Coast Main Line has been modernised.
That is a different kind of challenge from the one that people like Robert Stevenson and Joseph Locke experienced.
In that respect, we've moved on.
It is difficult to operate a 21st century railway with a 19th century route structure and infrastructure. And my hat off to the engineers and the operators who make it possible to make the West Coast Main Line what it is today.
It's been a huge success. People underestimate the scale and the size and the complexity of trying to modernise what essentially was a Victorian railway.
Both passengers and freight users have got a really modern, reliable, super railway and a benefit for them for many years.
People now go to Manchester in less than 2 hours, and we've taken an hour off the journey time to Glasgow, and we've got thousands of more seats each and every day, and I genuinely believe that the passenger experience has been transformed over the last 5 years.
The scale of a project like West Coast increases our profile, and it also enables us to have more confidence for the future in terms of project delivery.
I think the railways are going through a renaissance. Over the last few years, we've started to see more people wanting to use the railways, more investment being made available into the railways. there's a very bright future.
We've got an investment programme now of £20 billion over the next 5 years. That involves things like Thameslink, interfacing to Crossrail. Our credibility and our confidence to deliver those is really bolstered massively by last year's success on the West Coast project.
We're very, very proud about it, and I'm very proud of the 5,000 or so people that have worked 7 days a week for the last 7 years to deliver what has been a huge engineering challenge.